What is the saddest album of all time? It's actually a bit of a difficult question because some albums are sad simply because they're attached to certain times in our life or certain memories that we hold with them. To answer this question, I scoured the internet for video essays, internet forums, online lists, and listened to dozens and dozens of album suggestions. And after countless hours of listening to extremely depressing music, I've narrowed down a list of just a couple of the saddest albums in my opinion. And to preface this video, I won't be covering any disturbing or unsettling albums. I might make another video in the future just covering that specifically. But today we're just covering sad and depressing albums that have a bit of a bittersweet edge to them. And I understand there's a fine line there. One of the most underrated and influential producers of the modern era, James Blake effortlessly blends genres of hip-hop, pop music, R&B, soul, electronic into something that's uniquely his own identifiable style. And you can tell Blake is just a melting pot of numerous styles, and he's sort of a cyborg for twisting each respective style into something completely unrecognizable. And while many albums in his solo catalog have a very bleak atmosphere to them, I've specifically chosen this self-titled debut for being the bleakest of them all in my opinion. There are these massively synthetic textures that create such a unique alien landscape that's cold, bitter, and unrelenting. Even Blake's vocals are manipulated in a way that's glitched out and almost inhuman. And simultaneously at the same time, these vocal hooks are incredibly soulful, catchy, and emotionally potent as well. If you never heard this album or checked out James Blake's solo material, but you're looking for something that uniquely blends dubstep, ambient, R&B, this is a great place to start. I want to mention the track I Never Learned to Share. This is a song that has extremely heartbreaking lyrics with incredible vocal harmonies, and you have that refrain that repeats over and over again. My brother and my sister don't speak to me, but I don't blame them. And I love how the synths possess multiple harmonic characters throughout the piece. First, it starts off very dissonant, and then it turns into a bit of a resolution, and then it reaches an incredible climactic peak towards the end. So yeah, it's very much a living, breathing piece, and I can't tell you how obsessed I am with the melodic and textural character of Blake's voice throughout this whole album on tracks like Linden Farn 1 and 2, To Care Like You, and I Mind as well. Skeleton Tree is the 16th studio album release from legendary Hearts-Define rock group Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. And while many Nick Cave projects explore dark themes and themes of death and the macabre, this album hits a lot differently. See, during the finalizing process of recording Skeleton Tree, Nick Cave's son, Arthur Cave, tragically passed away after falling from a cliff known as Ovingdean Gap. And so, while their subsequent studio release in 2019, Ghosteen, is clearly about Nick Cave coming to terms with Arthur's death and mourning about the incident, there's still speculation as to how much of Skeleton Tree lyrically pertains to this particular incident, but it's very evident that throughout this album, Nick Cave's vocal delivery is dejected and almost breaking at points. Production is absolutely haunting with these eerie sine wave like synths in the background, sinister foreboding hits of drone and noise, and accompanying vocals that seem animated and brought to life as they mourn with Cave. And we have the third track, Girl in Amber, which is a bone-chilling, haunting song where Nick Cave wishes the world would just leave him alone instead of trying to help and fuel his sympathies. And it ends with this heartbreaking refrain, "Don't touch me, don't touch me." The next song, Magneto, features these heavy rumbling drones as Cave talks about his struggles of withdrawal from a heroin addiction he suffered from. And you have the song Anthracene, which presents a sprawling, chaotic, frenzied drum groove landscape. And this paints the picture of an apocalyptic Anthracene or Anthropocene movement where essentially human intervention has a great detrimental effect on the state of the environment's health. And this swirling musical landscape feels like being in the eye of a storm. I Need You displays Cave's most heartbreaking vocal performance that is amplified by this extreme vibrato in his voice, singing over and over again that nothing really matters now that someone you love is no longer present in the world. And you have the track Distant Sky, which is a forlorn but somewhat of a glimpse of light for the future generation. And you have this beautiful vocal performance by Els Tort, which is significant to this album because I believe it's the first time that Nick Cave has ever let another vocalist take the lead for a Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds project. And to close the album, we have the slow ballad Skeleton Tree, the most notable line being "Nothing is for free," and this is likely Nick Cave trying to find some answer as to how something so tragic could possibly occur. And his conclusion to this whole album is that this world is a closed system where this event paid the price for something else, possibly in Nick Cave's life, whether that be his addiction or other regretful life choices he made. It's a push and pull and a cause and effect kind of phenomenon that closes the record. We may only be about halfway through the list, but this is a personal favorite of mine. This is the album that I've spent the most time with over the years, and this album has accompanied me on many rainy days and many late night study sessions, and this album has become my personal comfort album. Many people would try to point you to Kid A or even OK Computer to be the saddest Radiohead album, and while I agree that those are very sad albums, me personally, A Moonshaped Pool takes the cake for being the definitive sad Radiohead album and being the most consistent sad throughout the whole listening experience. For one, this is Radiohead at their quietest, focusing heavily on hypnotic grooves or runs that allow a flurrying electronic landscape that lies underneath to fill up the environment. And to me, that's the best way to describe this album. It's subtle in its soundscape, but it's extremely hypnotic and addicting in that way. And just like the mysterious abstract album cover that's presented here, we're being transported to an uncanny world that's just enough like ours, but where Radiohead straddles a balance between something tangible and yet out of our reach, something that's familiar but still unrecognizable, and something that's so seemingly human and yet alien at the same time. This world is like ours, but instead we're left to self-reflect alone, and we're left cold to our own fragile human thoughts in a desolate, icy way. Look no further than the second track, Daydreaming, for this indescribable feeling and use of vocal manipulation to amplify this alien feeling. The song Glass Eyes is another sad highlight or low light, I would say, that just effortlessly floats along thanks to its supporting string section. And generally speaking, the textures on this album, whether they're organically sourced or synthetically produced, are just so impressive to me as to how unique the tones are. Every instrument or melodic line just sings with a tense emotion, and we even have a bit of a Latin bossa nova samba cut on the track Present Tense, and it's just a haunting piece with some incredible, almost ASMR-like percussion. And lastly, we end on a high note, or I guess I should say emotionally low note, with the track True Love Waits, which has this lagging, undulating feel to the accents in the piano's rhythm. And Tom York's vocals are just broken and yearning, and it's really just a great capstone to a heartbreaking album with an appropriate send-off, and one that gave me an emotional breakdown the first few times I listened to this track. So yeah, I'm just addicted to this album, and I connect with it probably the most, at least emotionally, out of all of Radiohead's releases in their whole catalog. In 1994, the band Low released their debut album, I Could Live in Hope, and the results are a bleak, dreary, dejected masterpiece. The key defining element is how extremely minimal the production and soundscape is, with a lead guitar, bass guitar, and a drum kit that consists of only just a cymbal and one of those wire brush snare drums. And yet despite this very simple setup, Low carries an emotional weight through these cold compositions, through gentle vocals to mark a landmark album in the development of the slowcore genre. And this is a very self-explanatory genre. These songs are indeed extremely slow. They take their time in unfolding their beauty, and to me this listening experience is kind of like reaching a point of failure or rock bottom where you realize none of your efforts will amount to anything and the only option is to just give up. So very appropriate advertising or branding for an album that you would expect from a band called Low. So yeah, it's just a massive downer of a record, mostly due to its fluid tempo and use of space that adds this gray cloud of heaviness in the atmosphere. But there's an immense beauty I find to this album too. The ending track is a cover of You Are My Sunshine, and it's twisted in a way that is interpreted to sound soul-crushing and really just this brooding finish to this already soul-crushing album. So yeah, Low really sticks the ending there. From a lot of lists I've seen online, most people point out Dragging a Dead Deer Up a Hill as their contender for one of the saddest albums of all time, and definitely the saddest from Grouper. And while this album is extremely sad and depressing, there was one forum that I checked that nominated this album Ruins from Grouper or Liz Harris, and at least to my ears, this album is a tad bit sadder, and it's mostly thanks to the production, which is usually washed out and more ambient and drowning on a Grouper album. But on this project, we have what is effectively just a piano plus Liz Harris's vocals, and that's all you hear on the album almost exclusively. And the result is a perfect album for a cathartic cry. Harris is just barely making out her words to the accompaniment of this pianissimo piano that, even though it's drowning out Harris's voice, it's just incredibly quiet, and the gain is turned up so high you can hear the static ambience of the recording room. I think at one point later on in the record you can even hear the squeak of the piano bench as the song fades out. And from compiling this list of albums, I realized there's different kinds of sadness and different ways that a sadness is portrayed sonically through music. In this case, this kind of sadness that's displayed on this record is one that makes me want to curl up in a ball on my bed and stare at the window blinds, not even through the window, but at the horizontal pattern of the window blinds, that seeping faint light that just bleeds through, because I'm reflecting on a time in my life that I messed up so bad that I don't even deserve to look at the scenery outside, but instead reflect of what I've done and force myself to look at the blinds. So yeah, it's that kind of soul-crushing sadness that's on full display on this album. This album is so dark and depressing, I would genuinely advise listening at your own discretion. So what is this exactly? Giles Corey is the musical side project of Dame Barrett, most notably of Have a Nice Life fame, and Death Consciousness is another record that almost made the cut on this list for how dark that album is as well. But if you really want to read deep into it, Giles Corey refers to an actual historical figure from colonial America during the Salem witch trials, and he was a farmer that was accused by several accounts for witchcraft and wizardry. Interestingly enough, he refused to plead, and his punishment was oppressing. Now, what this was basically they sandwiched him between two wooden boards and stacked extremely heavy rocks on top of him, and Corey complied over the next day or so before his eventual death, and his final words were, "Add more weights." So yeah, this is a public execution, and accounts claim that instead of crying in agonizing pain, he was virtually silent during the entire incident and just accepted his fate. Keep in mind that this is an 80-year-old man being executed for the claims made by mostly adolescent young girls. I would also like to mention the album cover too, which is something I've always been drawn to visually for years, and after doing some digging from Reddit, speculations are led to believe that it comes from a man from India around the 1930s. The man went by the name of Kuda Bux, a magician known for tricks like walking on hot coals or his X-ray eyes trick, which is seen on display here. This involved blinding himself with dough balls and cloth wraps, only to then perform impossible tasks like reading small text or lighting another man's cigarette, and that's what we see in the frame on the album cover here. So why do I mention all this? Well, this context illuminates a lot of the themes here on the record. Firstly, the album cover is referring to magic, witchcraft, and wizardry, similar to how Giles Corey was also accused of wizardry. And the profile of Giles Corey, however, is a type of haunting apparition or ghostly supernatural witchcraft, one that would get him punished, instead of being a marvel or a spectacle of entertainment like Kuda Bux. And if you listen to the extremely self-deprecating lyrical themes on this album, it coincides with Corey's acceptance of the image that his own community has painted him as. And to me, that's what's so sad about this album. Beyond the musical element that I'll touch upon in a little bit, Corey spirals into this existential depression because he realizes he's stuck. There's no due process during this time or level logical argument that will convince these hysterical people that he's innocent. You cannot prove anything, and the judicial system can only work with verbal accounts, regardless of how outlandish they seem. And so whether it's out of anger or acceptance, Corey just says, add more weight. He's claiming that he's obviously this devilish being that you all say I am, so go ahead and do your worst. So yes, thematically, this is an extremely dark and depressing album, and the sonic contrast that we have here only helps its cause. You have delicate guitar string sections matched with futile sounding vocals that just sound so defeated and helpless. A lot of the guitar tones and the percussion hits reverberate like they're being recorded in a cathedral. So yeah, aside from being a very sad album, this is a very well thought out concept album that, while borrowing from a story dating back almost a century ago, hits incredibly hard emotionally even today. Many of you probably saw this coming, but this is the 2017 release of Phil Elverum's project, Mount Eerie. And if you follow any of Phil's output, whether that be through the microphones or other Mount Eerie albums, you already know that there's, generally speaking, a very melancholic tone to all of his work. It may have something to do with how he looks to nature and his surroundings in Washington as being a source of inspiration. Immersing yourself in dark, enveloping forests and mountains, it's easy to feel small and vulnerable to contemplate your own spirituality in relation to the fragility of your own flesh and vessel. And yes, while there are aesthetic similarities in this album, it feels like a very different and separated project from other Mount Eerie albums. Basically, this album follows the tragic passing of Phil Elverum's partner, late Genevieve Castry. Instrumentally, we have a very bare, stripped back sound. Really, the background instrumentation is just there to serve its one and only purpose, and that's to supplement Phil's raw voice. Lyrically, this album reads like a series of chronological diary entries. These are loose, free verse, stream of consciousness songs that are soul-crushing and absolutely heartbreaking to listen to. At one point in the album, Phil talks about how he has this superpower, which is the ability to make everyone around him, even somewhere as mundane as a grocery store aisle, feel sad for him all at once. And this is the exact theme that's brought up in Skeleton Tree as well, and it makes living every day and just basic menial tasks extremely difficult, more difficult than they need to be. And while these people around him are trying to comfort him and have good intentions in mind, it's almost like it just keeps reminding him and produces the opposite effect. Like, how is someone expected to move on from something like this when a part of not just your life, but a part of you has been taken away from you? So explaining this album doesn't really do much good. It's very apparent at the surface what this album is about, and all you need to do is really just listen. But even still, I feel like everyone needs to listen to this album, not just for the sake of subjecting yourself to wallowing, but because I think art like this is very important at a broad scale, and this really is what art is made for. It's for sharing an experience, a moment, an emotion, a self-reflection piece, so that maybe others around the world who can see it can feel comforted in a way that they're not alone in their suffering, and that at the end of the day, these are universal experiences. And lastly, just want to say, with streaming services and the music industry and music reviewing lists, rankings like this, it's easy to turn music into just a metric. And so of course, a lot of times I'm going to even miss the meaning of art and the entire process of making art that consumption is supposed to take, of interacting with art and connecting to it at a genuine level. Yeah, just absolutely devastating album, and I don't really have anything else to say. So those are the albums I wanted to talk about today, and let me know what you think of these albums, if you've ever listened to any of one of them, in the comments below. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.